Hey guys, given the support the last video got, this is an official series on this channel now, and I can tell I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. I made a poll asking which character you guys wanted to see between Toji, Kiryu, Sam Fisher, and Kiichi Miyazawa, and I actually wasn't expecting it to go where it went. So for the second video in the series, we're going to be talking about Kiichi. Before we actually get into it, I've got a couple things to say about the series as a whole. I'm going to look at a bit of the character's history, as I believe where they've come from and how they're physically and mentally built is relevant to how they fight. Then, of course, I will break down what they actually do and what moves they have and what styles you can do to mimic them in real life. If they do a real style or something very easy to copy, my idea is to break down what specific stuff you can focus on, or, in this case, what aspects of the character's life are relevant. Because you'll see that with Kiichi's fighting style, it's very simple. I'm going to tell you what it is like really early on. So the rest of it is just everything surrounding how he fights. We'll get more into that later. Here's the big one, by the way. After every video on this series, I'm going to do a poll to see which character you guys want to see in the next video. Some characters, like Kazuma Kiryu and Sam Fisher, are going to be done guaranteed, just because I personally want to see what I can do to break them down. Now, these polls are more of a hype measurement system. Characters in the polls will be done at some point. It's just up to you guys when that is. So with all that broken down, let's talk about who Kiichi Miyazawa is, what he does, and how that plays into you and your mimicry of him. Kiichi is the inheritor of an assassination style called Nara Shinkage Ryu. I've actually made a video on Tough as a manga way back, which you guys need to watch. The short answer to how do I fight like Kiichi is just start practicing MMA. That's it. Kiichi's style is just a souped up version of MMA. Now, for more specifics, Kiichi himself keeps his grappling as a backup system or really a surprise attack. His main line of defense, his first line of defense, is his striking. Now, in the manga, it does have crazy heart destruction techniques and all that, but, let's ignore those. It's really very simple to do what Kiichi does in real life, and you can thank the art and choreography of Tough for that. The majority of Kiichi's strikes are punches and kicks found in MMA. I would say that's all you need, but you can specialize in striking. If you want, you can take some kickboxing classes separately to really sharpen your skills. Now, the strength of Nara Shinkage Ryu is that it can do anything, adjust to any opponent, which is why I said MMA instead of merging specific styles. Another defining characteristic of Kiichi is his freakish strength and genetics. He inherited certain traits and, without spoiling, he's just naturally very good at throwing kicks. There's more to it, but I'm just trying to be really vague with it. So you should focus on kicks once you take up MMA, if you can. He's really good at throwing jumping kicks specifically. That sort of becomes a defining or special move for him, especially as the manga continues and later in the manga. The jumping roundhouse does exist in Muay Thai if you want to stick to striking. I recently learned to throw it on pads, which is pretty exciting. Kiichi, however, can use this move to cut moving water in half, which is nuts. Another aspect that is especially difficult to mimic, but is one of his defining traits, is his lifestyle. Kiichi was taught to see food as fuel. He eats practically, if that phrase makes any sense. Early on in the Tough manga, you see this Yakuza guy comment on this and basically ask how he can eat basically what is gruel, right? How can you eat that stuff? So Kiichi sees food as just something he just eats to further his training. Everything is in service of his mission to live up to his father's expectations. Everything is in service of his mission to become worthy of inheriting the Nara Shinkage Ryu. Having a long-term goal lets Kiichi ignore what would make most people pretty uncomfortable. As for what Kiichi looks like, because remember, a build is important here, he's huge, but not absolute Batman levels of huge. I think you can pretty realistically look as big as Kiichi does, but just don't expect to be as shredded as him at the same time without either a lot more focus on the bodybuilding side of things or just, not being natural, let's say. Keep in mind, while I say all this, I'm trying to frame this for average people who have jobs or perhaps take classes. If you have the time and mental energy for all this, which Kiichi does, you can also look like him while fighting like him. But the reason that Kiichi looks and fights like this again is because this is his whole life. It revolves around being physically ready to inherit what is, in the universe, one of the most demanding and in-demand styles ever. Now, what really helps me break down Kiichi's lifestyle and training methods is tough as a manga. It gives us time in his basically home gym. His setup has, weights, a heavy bag, and then beyond that, he has these traditional things like a makiwara, but he's the type of guy who's willing to train anywhere. He does these crazy handstand thumb push-ups and all that. He's all about cultivating strength. Now, if you're in the mood for more traditional methods, Kyokushin has stuff straight out of a manga, like where they lift logs and do crazy bodyweight stuff for high reps, especially during their belt tests. You can also go to the mountains and punch trees if you want, if you got the budget for that. Anyways, since Nara Shinkage Ryu has both a traditional and modern element, like I said, a second way to do things is to take up Kyokushin as your base and mix it with either MMA or a dedicated grappling style like Jiu-Jitsu. People say that Kyokushin's greatest weakness is the lack of face punches, and they are correct, which is why I would advise taking up something additional or find a way to incorporate face strikes, maybe cross-train boxing. That's the most straightforward thing you could do. A huge part of Kiichi's grappling arsenal is leg locks, so when you train Jiu-Jitsu, you can focus on developing that moveset there. In my extremely brief experience with no-gi Jiu-Jitsu, a straight ankle lock was the first thing they taught me. So if you're interested in following this character's path, I think you'll be very excited to see just how fast you can kind of get into doing what he does in certain aspects. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, maybe this is why you picked Kiichi, but what makes him particularly fascinating to me is that his fighting isn't his main appeal, right? Now, the way he's drawn, he's extremely fast, explosive, it's awesome, but what makes him, what gives him a pull as a character is the same thing that gives Baki pull as a character. What pulls you to these people is their non-stop dedication to the lifestyle. That's why I emphasize the athleticism more than the actual fighting. The simplest answer I just gave it to you at the start, which is just train MMA, do kicks, right? Train legs. Now, despite emphasizing that Kiichi does lots of kicks, I wouldn't recommend Taekwondo for this. I don't think it prioritizes power, at least not these days. And even if you would like it to, I doubt you'd find many dojons that would train you that way. I also said Kyokushin instead of Muay Thai because Nara Shinkage Ryu is written to be a sort of a traditional style with a modern edge, and that gives you a larger variety of kicks without sacrificing power as much. Now, if you want to take up Muay Thai and learn side kicks and spinning kicks and all that on your own, feel free. This is just one of the most straightforward paths to doing things. Kyokushin, more importantly, also has low kicks, and if you read Tough, the very first low kick in Chapter 1 is the defining moment for Kiichi. It shows us how fast and skilled he is. It's our first impression of him as a character in one page. So you want a style that definitely does low kicks. So in summary, there are a few ways to fight like Kiichi Miyazawa, depending on how you want to go about it and what feeling you want for yourself while doing so. One method, Kyokushin plus BJJ with a focus on kicks and leg locks. The other, just do MMA, try to focus on the same aspects. Both lead to copying the Nara Shinkage Ryu in certain aspects, since it is basically a souped-up MMA. I know I'm going in circles here, kind of, but really, there's not much to fighting like Kiichi in terms of technique. You can find all of this, except for, the Tibetan monk type shit, anywhere in any MMA gym, Kiichi, what makes him different is not his fighting style. It's everything surrounding that, everything that builds that up. It's his diet, his mentality, his physical conditioning, and his just non-stop determination to keep at that stuff. You've got to really eat, think, and train like he does to be like him. Consider food as fuel. Lift weights, get decently big, but not so much that it impedes your movement. You're not like trying to be Kiriako's Grizzly here. Kiichi is able to live a life of training and fighting because he has a higher calling, a mission, which means he sees his stuff that he does as necessary steps towards that goal. You should also try and have this mentality. Set a goal that does not concern normal life. Doing things like this, is, I think, what keeps us motivated to train physically, especially when we live such sedentary lives, you know? Anyways, in general, the characters in Tough are all about technique. Their bodies are what allow them to use their martial arts, but at the same time, those bodies are only vessels for those skills. I'll keep reiterating this to counter the sort of one versus the other tribalism that you might see a lot. You need both. That's just it. These are sports. And yeah, I know there are also people who say these are spiritual endeavors, and they are. The idea is to have everything at once. To be like Kiichi, you need to be athletic, and you need to have these sort of more spiritual, traditional aspects to keep yourself going. You don't just allocate skill points to either physique or skill or intelligence or endurance or all this in real life. That's what makes things special. You can just do things. You can do all of it. So the ideal choice, which these characters are trying to show you, the lesson that I think Tough is trying to impart if you are looking at it from the perspective of an aspiring athlete or fighter, is to develop all these aspects, the mind, the body, the spirit, along the same sort of track. They all must go up. Or if you bring one down, the others will inevitably go down. So this is the key. The key to fighting like Kiichi is honestly just do a general jack-of-all-trades type of style and cultivate the mind and the body, and with it your spirit. That's the key. So that's really it for looking at Kiichi. Let me know what you guys think, if you have a different interpretation of the character or how to mimic him in terms of fighting or sports, because I'm always open to, new interpretations. This is just my look. So, this is more of just me talking. Depending on the character, depending on whether I can spend more time really breaking down their moves, you'll find that it's either going to be more sort of organized or more like this. So it really depends. It goes character by character. If they have a very obvious style, it's going to sound more like this, more closer to a sort of character analysis. And if they don't, if you have to break it apart piece by piece, move by move, it's going to be a lot more organized. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you all so much for coming and listening to my video. Love to hear any more suggestions. I'm always open to characters I didn't consider before. And see you all next time.